is Michael Shapiro, and welcome to Interplay Conversations in Music. I'm so delighted to have a fellow father, father of a athletic son, on. We have a lot in common, me basketball and Kyle baseball, but we're going to talk today about music and especially about Kyle Ketelsen's amazing career as a singer extraordinaire, bass-baritone, and for me, one of the greatest acting singers on the stage today. Hi, Kyle.
Thank you. Hi, Michael. Great to see you. Great to be here.
You know, when we talk about singers, there are all kinds of people. There is many kinds of people who are singers than are, uh, people in the world, fish in the sea. But the thing that I found remarkable about you, and I've only encountered it a few times, and I've lived in the opera house as a coach and conductor and observant for my entire life. Very few times have I seen anything like I saw when I first saw you as Golo in Peleas and Melisande in Los Angeles. I could not believe how great it was as far as every word coming through, the acting so well, and the singing was to die for.
Thank you so much.
So I have a question. I know you studied singing. You've sung at the Wiener Staatsoper. You've sung in Britain. You've sung the Met. You continue to sing all over the place, LA Opera, and also a lot of work with orchestras all over the world. But let's talk about acting because I find that fascinating. How'd you become such a great actor?
That's a good question. I mean, I think, you know, my teacher at Indiana, Totsi, used to say, he'd say, you either have it or you don't. And he was talking about stage presence. I think acting is certainly a skill you can hone and you can learn techniques of acting. I've never taken an acting class. Mute my phone. I've never taken an acting class. I've my whole life I think this probably came from my mother. I have memories of watching movies with my mother.
Mm,
And for whatever reason, I've just been grabbed by dramatic prowess. You see an actor on film or on TV or on stage, and it doesn't seem like they're acting.
mhm.
And that's method. That's Stanislavski. It's Brando and Dean and De Niro and on. And much more common these days, of course, than it was, half century ago. And so, and you learn as you go. I look at things that I did when I was early in my career,
Mhm.
acting wise, movement on stage, and one of the great, one of the great things we have today is video
Right.
that's so readily available.
Mm.
It's in your pocket. And I tell any young singer who will listen, the same as I've told my son on the mound. You watch yourself. You have to watch yourself over and over and over because you pick up things to do right and to do more. Sometimes more importantly, to
Mhm.
not to do
Mhm.
things that you say. I can't believe that I have that quirk in my delivery or that quirk in my movement on stage or whatever. And you can, if you're serious about improving, and as most of us are, and I'm a perfectionist when it comes to stagecraft,
Oh God, you
uh,
were.
voice and drama,
Mhm.
always looking for improvement.
Mhm.
Then you pick it out and you improve it. You store it away and you say, okay, that's what I'm going to do from now on, or that's what I'm not going to do from now on.
Okay. Let's talk
And
about
then,
this. Let's talk about this guy for a second.
yeah, I've seen him, heard of him.
He's a buddy of ours, He's got that Figaro house right behind St. Stephen's in Vienna, where I always go because I want to go in. I want to hear the kids screaming down the hallway and, you know, Stanzy Wanzy going, Wolfsie, did you get the milk?
Right.
But you sing regularly Leporello and Don Giovanni.
Yeah. And I've also sung Commendatore and Mazzetto much earlier in my career.
Mazzetto, well, that's wild. That would have been a major stretch to the old voce, which we'll get to Fach in a second range. But let's talk about approach. We just talked about acting. So, Leporello, Madamina, il catalogo è questo, right? The catalog is this. All the girls he's been with. But don't you have any different kind of character? So when you're approaching a role, and let's be specific, and something you're going to be a Leporello in Salzburg. I think, coming up.
Yes.
But you're often Don. Were you were Don Giovanni at the Vienna Staatsoper, weren't you?
Yes, I did a new production there by Barry Kosky, and it's I think we had two or three Wiederaufnahme that I've done. So yeah, a whole bunch right
But
at the
you're
beginning.
approaching different roles. Da Ponte, genius librettist, had the
Mm.
greatest composer working with him. I would have loved to have been in the room. And here we are. You're studying to be Leporello. How is that different vocally? And how is it different acting wise than singing and acting Giovanni? How do you approach
Uh,
it?
well, first of all, to Leporello, I first did Leporello I think in 2000, Madison Opera, 12 miles from where I'm sitting right now before I even lived here. And I remember it was Louis. What's his last name? You know, once you hit 50, Michael, I'm telling you, you can't remember it. I mean,
We will
try to
not talk
recall
about
information.
we will not talk about 70.
Okay.
All right.
Um,
Doesn't mean we can't have beer together. So let's continue. So
so
approaching
when
two
I
different roles. How do you
to
get there?
approach Leporello, uh, it's very much a comedic role. Obviously, you're the comic relief. But with comedy, I have always approached it, and I think I get this from I'll watch interviews with every great actor, every great director from motion picture history. And
Hmm.
one of the things that I've learned from that is that you can't approach comedy like you think it's funny.
Right.
I approach comedy like it's true to life. And if the comic writing is truly good, Da Ponte Mozart, it comes through. You know, I you don't try and yuck it up. And whenever I see that, and I see it a whole lot in the opera world,
Well, yeah.
you know, people do this and they throw their arms and say, "That's my I'm being funny gesture."
Not for me.
Yeah, you can't do that. In my opinion, it's just kind of draws yawns to me. I mean,
Right.
it's there's a certain amount of opera funny, that a bit's coming, and so you'll laugh at it. And I do that as well. If I'm watching a show, I'm familiar with the show, I know something's coming, and I laugh at it because it's cute. It's a convention. But when you're learning the role and to dramatically, or you're speaking of vocally,
Well, both,
you can't
both
you
acting and vocal.
Sure, you can't really change it. You can't say, well, now I'm doing Commendatore, so which I haven't sung since 1994, and I won't sing that for another 15, 20 years probably.
But you'll come back to it at the end.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, I proposed to Chicago Lyric because I did Mazzetto in 2004. I did Leporello in 2014. I proposed to them that I do Don Giovanni in 24 and then Commendatore in 34, but they didn't bite, so
They don't
this
have
is
a sense of humor. I'll have to talk to Matthew.
it might happen yet.
Okay.
So you can't say, well, now I'm doing this role, which is it demands, a darker sound or there are of course nuances you can give to it, but when it comes to just the overall vocal production, everything should be the same. You shouldn't change it only when it comes to this right here, and right here. You can't change it based on the role. So my approach to Leporello, now granted, I first studied Leporello a couple decades ago, and Giovanni is really a new thing to me. I mean, I did it a few times much earlier, and I don't count those. But now I'm really I'm doing it at the Met coming up, and I'm doing it
I can't
uh,
wait for that. I'll be there.
somewhere else. I forget where.
That's a pretty good place.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
I've heard of it too.
Um, I'm thrilled to do it there, of course. And it's the same basic approach vocally. You
But
can't
let's be very
alter it.
specific, if I may.
Of course,
We
please.
discussed, the catalog area, right, of Leporello. Madamina, il catalogo, questo. But then La ci darem la mano, where he's trying to seduce this woman. May I have your hand? Isn't there a different kind of singing and different kind of acting? Be
Certainly,
as specific as you can.
kind of singing. Certainly, and these are the numbers in as the role of Giovanni. These are the numbers that kind of ask the most of me, La ci darem and De Vieni, the serenade, because they should be a little softer, That's not my forte, so to speak. It's so when
Good point.
I can't give a floaty if I'm going to sing. I digress. Within the context of the show, especially, like if I were to warm up one day and just sing La Cirarem or Deviani, it would be much easier than in the context of the show. For example, the serenade is in the second act. It's after a duet, a trio, um, and a few recits.
Ti
And
vieni
so,
alla finestra. Yeah. So yeah. Okay.
so I have to approach it the same I would any other number in the piece. Um, and that is, you know, for example, I'll go the opposite direction. Fincando vino, candela testa, festa. It's but you can't do that with your voice. If you do, you're dead. And you learn that eventually. So basically, and I've told this to other singers who say, how do we do this? How do I do this? What is your opinion on this? I say, you got to sing everything as bel canto. Just have everything nice and legato, and you can let all of this mechanism here break it up. You got to have a solid, you just have to have a solid tone and make it a healthy tone. And this can break it up. Lips, teeth, the tip of the tongue, as my first teacher used to say.
Mm.
So it's dangerous when you start thinking, I'm gonna really make this bombastic. Now, that said, you can as an older singer, and I've found that as a singer who's been around a while, and I'm not so scared of hurting my voice anymore. I can do some things in a performance where I wouldn't dream of doing it when I was 25.
Mm.
Because as Russell Braun tells me about his dad, great baritone as well, Victor Braun, would say, these are basically they're just flaps of leather. He's about 55, 60s. Like basically, they're just leather pieces of leather at this point.
Well, the leather changes after a while. But Kyle,
That's
listen,
true.
I want to get deeper because I
Okay.
love talking to you about this kind of incredibly nerdy stuff because it to me it's a driving force. When I'm writing my own opera, my own song cycles, it's very much something I'm thinking about.
Good, good.
A dramatic writer like this guy, which Beethoven was not,
Yeah.
but this guy was to his core, understands, and there are very few people in the history of music, of writing, who've understood that there is a obligation for the opera theater composer to move people across the stage within the context of a story or words or paragraphs or whatever it is that the librettist is trying to do and the composer is trying to make it clear. It's the role, in my mind, of the singing actors to follow the text, and hopefully they have a good director, because I know that is a big problem in opera. Sometimes you just don't. And somehow portray on the stage what is exactly going on. So, for example, your Golo in the Péléas et Mélisande of
Mhm.
Debussy, I understood what you were going through every step of the way. Because Golo is he's a tragic figure. He loves
Yeah.
this woman. He finds her in this crazy
He's the most
forest.
realistic, in my opinion, he's the most realistic character in the show.
I agree with you. And for me, I don't think Otello should be called Otello. I think it should be called Iago.
There's my wife back there.
Hi there. And I think I think that Otello is not the major character in that play of that was written for the great Verdi by a great librettist who happened to be a composer. But if you're talking about Giovanni, there is many people they think that Don Giovanni is the greatest libretto ever written by Da Ponte for him, even with the other two. I mean, Figaro is amazing, but there's something about Giovanni that is just so troubling. So you, as a married man, father of wonderful children, how do you portray what is going through the mind of not only Golo, but also the mind of Giovanni? How are you approaching it?
Well, it's not. I don't find it that difficult. In fact, I relish it because I've gone after those roles that are dramatic, that do ask for us as performers dig into ourselves and to, there's the method word again, to find motivation within your own experiences to apply it to your character and to place it on stage.
None of us are
But
Casanova, you know. How do we find, Da Ponte knew Casanova. Casanova apparently saw Don Giovanni. I mean, how do you, I mean, when you think of these things, it's just so ludicrous. How does a wonderful man like you, with a lovely wife and children and lovely house, get into the soul of somebody who's dragged into hell by the commendatore at the end? I mean, that's acting of the deepest kind, isn't it?
yeah, well, who in the history of humankind has ever been truly approached by um, a ghost and dragged into hell for, in reality? I'm going
I'll
to
let you
guess
know. I'll let you
probably
know.
zero.
I'll let you know if it
No.
happens. Yeah.
Right, right. I mean, we're still waiting.
We're still waiting.
So who is qualified more than, who is more qualified to do that? Who is not as qualified to do that? Uh, all you can do is, if you can't relate terrestrial feelings and sensations and experiences to the character, then you just have to use your imagination a bit. And
Right.
hopefully you have a good director, as you said. Hopefully there's good staging. Hopefully you have good colleagues who help you with that. Um, but if not, I mean, the music,
Uh,
it's no secret that the music, the underpinning, the it's the linchpin of the entire experience of opera.
yeah.
And there's a reason that movies are scored and that television programs are scored,
Yeah.
because it adds so much to the atmosphere and environment. And
Sure.
so the basis for opera is music, and it's there. And so you trust it and you use it and you follow it. And hopefully it aids you. In the case of Wolfie over there, it does very much so.
Now, I'd like to talk about your movement physically because you're a good-looking guy. You're in your 50s,
Oh, yeah, thanks.
but I can talk this way because you're 20 years younger. So let's just talk about physique. You keep yourself in good shape. You're not some blob on the stage. You're not. You look like a good guy.
Thank
You're
you.
in, you're in good shape. You know how to move. You know how to play all kinds of very dramatic roles, and you're a leading man. You've been a supporting man, but you're a leading man. I'm curious whether you think opera would benefit from more people studying acting and also elocution. I understood every word you sing,
Thank
whether
you.
it's
That's,
English or French or German. I always
I
understood.
think that's my most common compliment is I understood every word, and I love that more than anything else. And
It's like
uh,
Broadway.
it might be, yeah, without the microphone.
Yep.
Um, it might be partially thanks to my fa. I think sopranos and tenors might have to alter their vowels a bit more than we lower voices do.
Mhm.
But I don't attribute the entire
I don't buy
shebang,
it.
the entire deal to that.
I don't buy that.
My first teacher at University of Iowa was a man named Albert Gammon, and he was a legend there in the region, and his tree extends. I still meet people who studied with him in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. And diction was he was a guru. Um,
He's right.
and so I learned a whole lot from him that is still there. And I still quote him. I still talk to fellow students of his about him specifically for diction as well.
Mhm.
And his colleagues, a woman named Darlene Lawrence, who played for him, and lives in Escondido. Um,
Because there's no conflict between getting the word out correctly. And look, I come from New York, so I'm used to Broadway. Every word comes through, even with the mic. The whole Ethel Merman thing of hitting the back row, which a lot of opera singers can do, but I'm saying, what the hell are they singing? I don't
yeah,
understand it. So whenever I'm involved in the pit or I'm doing my own operas or song cycles, I'm a terror. I don't understand a word. I just cannot live with the Joan Sutherland way of singing, as beautiful as she was. I didn't
yeah.
understand
I
one
mean,
word. And if
it's
you're not getting the
it's
words across, how are you getting what they wanted
it's
across?
accepted though. It's today and always it's accepted. Prima la voce, the voice first. And if it's a beautiful voice and which just you can't believe the beauty, the quality of it.
Mhm.
then you forgive other things. You forgive the acting, you forgive the diction, and it's done over and over again. Now, you
Yeah.
asked if I think it would be to the benefit of opera if it were improved, if the diction, if the enunciation were much better, more clear. Yeah, of course, I think it would. I mean, it would enhance the entire experience, the Gesamtkunstwerk of what we're doing.
Speaking of which,
No,
do you do you do you sing much Wagner or
not at
Strauss?
all so far, but I'm putting out feelers for a few roles like Dutchman. The Wotan, I think Rheingold is all the for me so far. It's not that exciting of a role for me in that show as it is in the others, but it's not as demanding.
How about in
And
Parsifal?
um,
Brunemans?
maybe I mean that might be one where I could do
I think you could.
one or two roles in that.
You could have a spear in your side for 4 acts. You definitely.
I would love to. I mean, I would love to sing some Dutchman to start. As long as I can get past the aria, which is pretty early, then yeah. But I find myself getting tired a lot less often these days than I did, even 10 years ago.
But you know how to sustain and you know how to carry. I want to talk about Fach because I find this very interesting. When I first heard you, there was a dark sound to the baritone role of Golo, which I had not heard before.
Hmm.
And you describe yourself as a bass baritone.
Certainly, yeah.
So what do you think that range is? Starting from what, an E below the staff?
In performance, easily a D, um,
A D.
and it's expanded. It's the rubber. It's the elasticity of the voice that if you sing long enough, it does. It happens over and over with singers who remain, especially in my Fach. It gets lower and it gets higher, and that's certainly been the case. So I mean, I warm up to C below staff. I would sing D easily in performance, and I have the creation, Haydn creation calls for a D, and then above. In performance, I'm called upon to sing some F sharps. And that's good for me. Hoffmann has an optional F sharp at the end, or in one of the arias, one end of Santia Diamant, and there are some F sharps. I think there are only Fs in Escamillo, but then some F sharps here and there, and a G. I think there is maybe some interpolated. Oh, Golo has an F sharp, but maybe there's some interpolated Gs that you could, just kind of add
That's going to tenor country, though, isn't
on
it?
certain roles. Say again.
It's going to tenor country when you're up
Yeah,
that.
yeah, and I warm up to G flat regularly. I'm sorry, A flat, G sharp.
I was thinking
Um,
F sharp, G flat. I hope you do.
yeah, I hope so.
I hope so.
But you
Right.
know, I'm I've always called myself a bass with high notes. And I think a lot of singers call themselves bass baritones who are neither a bass nor baritone.
What are they?
I don't know. Um, I think it's a I truly don't think there are many of us.
I hear from sopranos that there's a break in my voice there. There's a break in my voice. I don't hear any quotes break in your voice. It seems very, very.
Thank you. It's easier now than it used to be, but that's one of the things that we singers have to work on. One of those things that does stick out is the passaggio, and so there's that time when you can carry your chest voice up to a certain point, and then there are one, two, maybe three semitones which are mixed
Mm,
before you go to a full cover. And for me, that stops at about E flat, E, those two. Sometimes on a D, I'll cover a little bit, meaning I'll put it in head voice just a little bit, depending on the vowel.
you're
But
talking
for
above
these,
the staff.
yeah, above the staff,
Yeah.
and then safely every single time an F, definitely. Occasionally I'll cover an E natural, but so those E flat and E are a passaggio for me, right? So it used to be much more difficult for me to produce an attractive tone on those two half pitches.
Interesting.
And it's a lot easier now. It's a whole lot easier. It doesn't bother me at all. Whereas before I would really stress about those,
Well,
not stress, but I would be concerned about those. It's not so much anymore. I mean, age is such a benefit in this
it's
business.
knowledge. You're wiser, but there's another aspect to it
It's
because
I mean, it's physical too.
yeah, but I think you're so cognizant. in your singing that I've encountered to what is happening in the word in that very moment and in the action. That I think perhaps you're not worried about these things anymore because you're thinking of the being that you're inhabiting at that
Sure.
very moment.
Well, that will certainly free one up from being so concerned with this square, this cubed 9 inches here. Um, when you can think of anything else, then your brain isn't spending so much time on vocal production. And in the ideal world, that's the point where you say, "Wow, I was free and I was able to produce that tone attractively and healthily." And one way that teachers have done that, and I've had repeated numerous teachers do that, and I've actually given this in master class and to colleagues. I'll say, okay, when you go to sing the note, you make another physical motion on that note, that problematic note, and suddenly it frees it up because suddenly your brain that is concentrating so much on right here changes its focus, and suddenly it's concentrating on a physical activity such as throwing your arms in the air,
Well,
and it
you
just
are an
frees it up.
athlete. You understand this because I know that when I'm
Yeah,
working out, I do stretches in the morning and Peloton often, as much as I can.
nice.
I've noticed in stretching that if I'm not breathing along with the stretch, that
Hmm.
suddenly my body's going tense a little bit. Where
Ah,
I let out when if my stretch, then it's very natural. It's fine, which is exactly what you're talking about in singing. As our final round of thoughts, Kyle Ketelsen, magnificent singer, friend, I want to ask you a question. What would you like to sing going forward? What roles and what kind of music?
I find myself whenever I've approached bel canto, much of it doesn't seem attractive to me, especially the comedic roles. Um, I mean, I've done the smaller ones like Basilio and Barber, and I did my first Dulcamara, which it's a lot of patter. It's a whole lot of words
Tell our listener what that's from.
from Elixir of Love, Donizetti, L'Elisir. And so I find myself, and I think this is nothing new for me personally, looking for the dramatic roles. I want to go into more. I mean, I can't say more because I think most of my career has been dramatic, as opposed to comedic. I would Scarpia in Tosca is one that I've looked at every 5 years or so since I was 25, and it's been no, 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 no. Still can't do it. Still can't do it. Only last year I looked at it and I thought, I think I can do it now. So that's one that we're putting the feelers out as well
No,
for.
great.
Yeah, I would love it because Tosca. I mean, Puccini didn't write a whole lot for me. Um, I did some Collines early in my career, 20 years ago at the minimum.
Do you still have
And
your coat?
yeah,
Okay.
yep, I sold it. Got some medicine.
Good for
Um,
you. She
yeah,
needed it, but it didn't really help her.
yeah,
Too
a little
clear.
late, too late,
Too
too little,
late.
too late, Colline.
Sorry. But Colleen
Um,
is a tiny part. There's very little in Puccini.
yeah, yeah. And so I've had to think about. I just watched Butterfly at the Met, and I was looking at Sharpless, and I was thinking, okay, I could do that. I could do that role. It's not a. It's of course a tertiary role, but it's got a good amount of stuff to do, and it won't kill you. It's not a whole
You can
lot.
have, you can drink un altro bicchiere, you know?
There you go.
It's no, but it's not. You are such a major singer that I think it's got to be the really big roles. How does Iago strike you?
I think that's too baritone. Um, because I would never call myself a baritone if I were to try certain baritone roles. But there's crossover. It's kind of a George London thing. It's
I'm
kind of
thinking
that
George London.
sort of,
Before you
yeah,
mentioned Botan.
yeah. I mean, I think he might have been an easy half step higher than me. Um, but he's called a bass, as I like to be with high notes. He's a bass, but he's a high bass.
Now, your voice, you think, has changed over time?
Um, yeah, it's there are certain milestones that occur in singers,
Hmm.
and it changes with the gender as well.
Right.
Women have different things that go on than men, of course. Newsflash, we're different. And for me, I remember the first time I heard this was Totsi told me when I was studying with him in my 20s, my late 20s, and he said, as you approach 30, puberty's finally going away. You're all the it lasts that long, and so you have all these residual hormones which are affecting this.
Yeah.
He said, when you get 30, when you reach 30, give or take, it'll become richer sound. Came true. Your stamina will increase. Came true.
Hmm.
One other thing, which came true, and that was 30. Okay, so then you have that new era, and you kind of sing. You think, wow, it's getting easier, right? And then you go in your 40s, and which is supposed to be the high point of your career, your 40s, your vocal high point. And then for me, then I hit 50, and it's easier than ever now. It's so easy to sing now.
You're such a magnificent singer.
Well,
Folks,
thank you.
we have to leave this wonderful discussion. But Kyle Ketelsen, bass baritone extraordinary. Folks, whatever you can do, wherever you are, if Kyle's singing, go see him and revel in a production that is so rare in our world. Kyle Ketelsen, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you very much, Michael. Great to talk to you.
This is Michael Shapiro for Interplay Conversations in Music. Thank you for joining us.